finding gaps in armor with suspicious accuracy that suggested divine guidance or perfect knowledge of equipment weaknesses. Officers fell first. Men, marked by their better equipment and confident bearing, each death forced a pause. A bunching up of forces that made them even better targets for the next volley. What happened next defied every rule of medieval warfare that Alcama had mastered. Instead of retreating to better ground where his advantages could matter, he responded with overwhelming force. "Send the Berber mountain troops," he commanded his subordinates. These were his specialists, men who'd grown up in mountains and should have been able to handle this terrain. The Berbers advanced skillfully, using cover and moving in tactical bounds. They reached the base of the cliff directly below the cave. That's when they heard Pelayo's voice, amplified by cave acoustics, into something supernatural, delivering a speech that chroniclers would record in a dozen versions. "Men of Asturias. Today we stand not just for ourselves, but for every Christian in Iberia. Today these valleys will run red with invader blood. Today we restore the kingdom of our fathers. Trust in Christ and in your strong right arms." The response to the Muslim herald's ultimatum, "Submit, convert, or die," came not in words, but in brutal action. An arrow took the herald through the throat. A shower of stones sent the Berber vanguard scrambling for cover. The first charge involved 1,000 men, compressed into space meant for 50 at most. Imagine the physics that defied survival. Armored soldiers pressed together so tightly they couldn't raise weapons properly, couldn't protect themselves, couldn't fight or flee. Those in front couldn't retreat through the press. Those behind couldn't stop pushing forward. The mass of humanity became its own worst enemy. And this is where it gets absolutely brutal, in ways that haunt military historians, as Muslim forces bunched up below the cave, struggling desperately to deploy in the narrow space. Pelayo's men began their work not with swords or spears, but with stones dropped from 300 feet, not random throwing by amateurs. These were aimed shots by generations of shepherds who could hit a wolf at 50 yards with a sling stone and had been practicing this exact scenario. 50-pound chunks of limestone became artillery shells, traveling at 60 miles per hour. At that velocity and mass, the kinetic energy equaled modern artillery. Damascus steel meant nothing. The finest armor from Toledo's forges crumpled like parchment paper. Men weren't just killed, they were pulverized into unrecognizable meat. The sound alone broke spirits and drove men mad. Limestone on steel creates a bell-like ring that echoes through valleys and penetrates souls. Multiply that by hundreds of impacts per minute. Add the wet crunch of stones meeting flesh, bones shattering like pottery. The screams of the dying amplified by canyon acoustics, creating a soundscape from hell itself that survivors would hear in nightmares for the rest of their lives. Ahmed from Damascus, veteran of 20 battles across 3 continents, found himself pressed against limestone walls by the mass of his own comrades. His sword arm was pinned to his side by compression. He couldn't lift his weapon, couldn't retreat, couldn't even fall when a stone crushed his shoulder. Men died standing upright, held vertical by the press of bodies, their corpses remaining in formation. The physics of mass panic in confined spaces turned elite soldiers into victims of geometry. As stones rained from above, instinct demanded retreat. But retreat was impossible through the press. The column had become a single organism 10,000 men long, capable only of pressing forward into death. Then came nature's judgment, whether by design or divine intervention. The limestone cliffs above the battle chose this exact moment to fail catastrophically. 100,000 tons of rock moving at 60 miles per hour down a 40-degree slope. The physics are simple and merciless. Nothing survives that impact. The avalanche didn't just kill, it dammed the Deva River that ran along the valley floor. Bodies and boulders created a natural dam 30 feet high. Water backed up rapidly in the narrow canyon. Men who'd survived stones and avalanche now faced drowning in water barely 2 feet deep as their armor dragged them down. The dam lasted just 20 minutes before bursting. When it did, a wall of water carrying thousands of corpses swept down the valley like divine judgment made liquid. The final body count defies belief and challenges military historians. Conservative estimates place Muslim losses at 15 to 18,000 dead out of 20,000 who entered the valley. Some enthusiastic chronicles claim 124,000 casualties. But the truth is horrific enough without exaggeration. Perhaps 70 to 80% casualties in a single afternoon. Achieved not through superior fighting, but through geographic execution where terrain became the primary killer. Christian losses, 5 to 10 men. Mostly those who advanced too far during counterattacks. The ratio was approximately 1,800 Muslim dead for every Christian casualty. The most lopsided victory in medieval warfare achieved through perfect use of terrain as a weapon system. The valley became a charnel house. Bodies stacked 10 deep at the narrowest points created literal dams that turned the battlefield into a series of bloody pools. Armor became anchors, dragging wounded men underwater barely 2 feet deep. The finest cavalry in the Muslim world drowned in their own blood, mixed with river water and the crushed remains of their comrades. Those who escaped the valley faced the mountain peasants who emerged like wolves. Every village, every shepherd's hut, every mountain path had become a killing ground where local knowledge meant nowhere was safe for fleeing soldiers. Men who'd conquered from the Indus River to the Atlantic Ocean were hunted down by children who knew every cave and crevice, by women who'd seen their families destroyed, by old men settling scores. The killing continued until darkness made it impossible to distinguish friend from foe, as the sun set on that blood-soaked valley. Nobody yet understood. They had just witnessed the first domino fall in an 800-year war that would reshape European civilization and eventually drive Islam completely from Iberia. The Battle of Covadonga proved that 300 men with perfect knowledge of terrain could destroy armies 100 times their size. The Valley of Death became Christianity's birthplace in Spain. Within months, Christian resistance sparked across northern Iberia, inspired by the impossible victory. The Reconquista had begun not with grand strategy, but with desperate men making their stand where the mountains themselves could fight beside them. From this single mountain valley would grow the kingdoms of Leon, Castile, and Aragon that would eventually unite to complete the Reconquista in 1492. 770 years after Pelayo's stand. The cave that sheltered 300 desperate men now shelters the idea that faith and determination combined with perfect terrain can overcome any odds. Al-Qama's body was never found, likely crushed beyond recognition under 100,000 tons of limestone. Pelayo was crowned King of Asturias, founding a dynasty that would eventually become Spain itself. The lesson echoes through military history. When your back is against the wall or deep inside a cave, when defeat means extinction, impossible odds become irrelevant if you choose your battlefield wisely. Subscribe to Great History for more battles where geography became destiny and desperate defenders changed civilization forever.